With a price tag of only $3,000 brand new, it's no secret that the XR150 is the best bang for your buck street legal dual sport motorcycle on the market today. Did I just get that mouthful of words first try? Is that gonna work? But seeing under 800 miles on the dash after almost 2 years of ownership, it's also become no secret that I'm not much of a dual sport guy, which is a shame. Because I really do love this bike. Oh my God, dude. Every day we get closer and closer to finding out if my life is worth viewer retention. So today, with just a few simple changes, we're gonna be taking this thing from the best bang for your buck dual sport bike to the best budget Supermoto. Hopefully by saying it'll be simple, I didn't just jinx that. Welcome to day 4 of a build that should have taken 2 days max. Now, of course, the most obvious change that we're making today is we're swapping to these beautiful looking 17-inch Supermoto wheels and tires. Cannot wait to see how those look on the bike, but we're also making a bunch of smaller changes that are also gonna make a big impact, like switching out to a smaller front fender. And by the time that we're done, this thing should not only look so much better, but should be way better set up for all the hooligan activities I have planned for it. Let's begin. Now, if you've seen the channel before, you know how we always do things. Anytime that we have multiple projects to tackle at once, we always start with the easiest thing and work our way up to the hardest. That way, by the time we get to the most difficult part, we already have a bunch of small wins under our belt and we're amped up. So first thing that we're doing, which should be the easiest, is we're actually gonna take off the passenger foot pegs to clean up the look. This is something I've wanted to do for the longest time, but it has not been possible until now. If you look at the left side passenger foot peg, you can see that it's just as easy to take off as you would imagine. There's just these 2 bolts right here and it'll pop right off. But on the right side of the bike, things are a bit different, and you'll see that this right here is why up until now we've not been able to take this bracket off. This part right here is actually the brake light switch, so when you hit the rear brake, it pulls on that spring right there, and then this thing activates the rear brake light. And the problem is, if you look at this brake light switch, it's actually mounted right here on the foot peg bracket. So the issue up until now, of course, has been if you remove this passenger foot peg, what happens is now that brake light switch has no way to be attached to the bike, and it's just dangling, not doing its job. I say up until now because Brian, one of my subscribers, has actually 3D printed these mounts and sent me one to test out. And essentially how it's meant to work is that this bracket comes off, this just goes right there in its place, and then that hole right there is what's gonna mount the brake light switch. All right, so we're gonna take this spring right here and just pull down on that to get it out of that hole. And then the brake light switch is actually just gonna push up and out of there. And then a 12 milli will make light work of taking the bracket off. Okay, let's go. Then we'll take the brake light switch and we'll fish it through this hole on the bracket, push it up until it hits the little lock nut, put the spring back in its home, and then reattach this guy with the stock bolts. Doesn't need to be super tight, just nice and snug. And before we do too much celebration about how good it looks, let's make sure that it still works properly. So you can see back here, you have the glow of just the regular running light, and then we'll push on the brake, and boom. Still works and turns the light on. We're good to go. It looks so much cleaner without that big doofy bracket on there. And not only that, I wasn't even thinking about this part, but between these 2 brackets, I'm gonna say this is like an easy 3 to 5 pounds. So a way cleaner look and saving weight, that is the ultimate win-win. Shout out to Brian for putting in the time and work to make this bracket finally that so many of us have wanted. Thank you for sending it to me. Thank you for the heartfelt letter that you sent with it. And if you want one of these brackets for your XR, there will be a link in the description. All right, now in the spirit of taking off stock things to make this bike look even better, the next thing that we're doing is actually a 1-2 punch. We're finally getting rid of this absolute floppy wiener of a front fender.
What did he say?
I've been dying to do this for the longest time because I mean, just look at it. It looks ridiculous. And we're also going to be taking off this stock rear rack back here because as useful as it is, I just don't think it'll get as much use in Supermoto form, and at least definitely not enough use to make it not worth taking it off and cleaning up that back end more. Now I'm realizing I forgot to mention that in the last XR150 video, if you didn't see that, we actually did the TST fender delete as well as some LED upgrades on this bike. And as good as it looks, it's going to pose a bit of an issue for us in this next step. When we take the rear seat off, you'll see that the rear rack attaches at 4 points underneath the seat and then 1 point on each side here, which seems simple enough. You just take these bolts out and this will come off. The issue is that in order to get this fender delete as tidy as it is, we had to remove this big metal bracket that used to come down like this, and it actually added a lot of support to this back end. With a stock fender, I'm pretty confident that you could just take this rear rack off and you would be fine, but I did notice during the install of the fender delete that without this rear rack, everything's very loose back there. Let's see if I can get this to translate well over video, but with the rear rack still on, you can see this is all nice and tight, or at least as firm as it's gonna get. But with the rear rack off, everything is very just loosey-goosey and kind of flops all over the place. So that big metal piece that used to come underneath here, attached to the frame and then attached in other places that kind of held things together, and without it, everything is loose. Now you might be saying, once you put the seat back on, it'll hold this white part in place from flopping around, or you could even just get some washers right there to hold the white piece down, which I thought about, but there's really no space for a washer in there, and the head of the bolt isn't big enough to do it on its own. And even if this white piece was held down and in place, you'll see that this part right here is independent of that, so this part would still shake around, and that is what the light itself is attached to. This center part of the rear rack attaches those two parts so that they stay together. And I don't know about you, but having my actual tail light only held on by these two bolts going through plastic right there is not very confidence inspiring. I say all that to say, we're literally just gonna cut this center part out of the rear rack so we can still use this middle part to perfectly hold the back end together. Now, like I said, this part is a 1-2 punch because we're also taking off this hideous front fender in favor of the sexy new one. I'm probably gonna butcher this name. I don't know how it's pronounced, but Exurbis, is that how you pronounce it? They do all the off-road stuff? I don't know. Exurbis? Acerbis? I don't know. I'm sure you guys will correct me in the comments. As you can see, this thing's gonna be much shorter than the gigantic front fender, and it should angle up a little bit more as well instead of just like flopping down. The shaping of it is a lot more, I guess modern would be the right word, and it has these cool slits in the back. But you'll also notice that there's no mounting holes in it. This is actually just a universal fender, so we will have to take off the stock fender and then get some holes mocked up so we know where to drill, and then we'll take this and the rear rack to the house where the tools are and get the rear rack cut and this drilled out. Okay, I think we actually have a bit of an issue. I went to do a little test fit, and as you can see, I think we're gonna need some spacers because the bottom of the headlight makes contact with the fender right there, and you can't just like lean the back up or else it'll hit the frame there. You can see that the stock fender mounts there, but then they have like that deep groove that kind of like makes room for the headlight, you see? Whereas this one, where it mounts, the fender starts right there. So we're gonna have to figure something out. Okay, so here's the game plan. We're gonna take the rear rack to my house to get it cut, and then since we'll want to paint where we cut so that it doesn't rust, while the paint is drying, we'll bring the drill here to figure out the fender solution. I think that makes the most sense. Ready, break. Welcome to the next day. The good news is we got the rear rack cut and painted, and it looks like it'll work perfectly. And we also got the spacers and bolts that I think will make that new fender work. But the bad news is my mental health has been dwindling for the past week. Last night I did not sleep at all. I woke up late as shit, started my day with some bullshit. Tried to go to Wawa to get a Diet Coke to make it better and almost got hit head on by somebody who was driving directly at me in my lane. I don't want to be here working on the bike right now, but I threw on my flip-flops to channel the spirit of all the dudes in Brazil and Asia and everything that are ripping wheelies on their Supermotos and flip-flops looking cool, and sometimes you just gotta do stuff when you don't want to, okay? If you wait for motivation to take action, you'll never do anything. Who's gonna carry the boats?
Who's one more to carry the boats?
No, but really, I have such little motivation today that I'm not even setting up my wireless or my lapel mic. I'm just doing what all the cool TikTok kids do, and it's gonna have to work. Let's get it. That was unhinged. This whole video is unhinged. Oh, shit. Yep, that's how the day's going. All right, so first things first, here's that middle section that I cut out of the rear rack. You can see that I literally just cut as close to these bolt holes as possible and took the rest of it off. And then I painted it to make it look uniform and make sure that it's not gonna rust. Obviously, it didn't need to be the prettiest job ever because it's gonna be hidden. And I realized that I didn't really explain this in the best way possible. The easiest way to explain it is just that this whole taillight section before the fender delete was attached to that big rear fender. Now, this is connecting all four of these points. So the taillight is not only gonna be held to the frame, but also to this white part. I don't know if that did a better job or not, but whatever, let's put it on. Okay, so you see now with this installed how sturdy this back end is. That is exactly what I was looking for. Oh yeah, and I don't think I mentioned, but this rack is how we had the TST brake light flasher relay held in place. Okay, so now we just gotta Oh, and I didn't realize that actually this rear rack is part of what holds the seat on also. So I guess you couldn't take the rear rack off even if you hadn't done the fender delete. I guess you have to keep this. I don't know how I didn't notice that before. Oh, right, this is supposed to be a transition. Go back to that. Okay, so now we just gotta... Dude, that looks so much better. Now, obviously, it's not perfect, or I should probably not say obviously because not everybody's as OCD as I am, but there are still like the holes left in the plastic since it's meant to have that rack coming through, and you can still see a little bit of the metal that I cut through there, so maybe I'll do some plugs there at some point or something, but either way, it's so much better than it was before. Also, I took off this toolkit that used to be like back there-ish. I've honestly never used it in the entire time that I've had the bike, so anything I can do to strip it down and save weight and make it look better, I'm gonna do. Not to mention, I don't really see the point in this in the first place because anybody can get into it. It looks like you need a key to get in, but you don't. Literally any flat object will turn it and open it, so yeah, no need for that. All right, now let's talk front fender and how we're gonna drill the holes. Like I said, the new front fender is universal, so we have to find a way to perfectly drill the same holes that the stock fender has into the new one. Now, because it's universal, it's pretty cool. They actually have this chart that shows all these different bikes and exactly what measurements you need, and you take those measurements and you actually line them up on this sticker here that fits perfectly into these corners, and that tells you exactly where to drill. But you'll notice that the XR150 is not on here. However, with my handy dandy measuring boy, I realized that it seems to be the exact same specs as the Honda CR125. The hole diameter is gonna be different, I believe, but the specs should be the same. So here's what we gotta do. We're gonna take the sticker that came with the fender and we're gonna line it up perfectly in those corner markers. You see how each of the corners of the sticker go perfectly into that little like right angle that's already on the fender, and then smooth it out. So the A axis is gonna be 29 millimeters and the B is gonna be 50. What that means is that we're gonna come out to 29 on each side. So you can see it has them marked super small. It'll be one below this 30 and then one below this 30. And then from those points, we'll go up to the 50 line as well and drill there. At least I hope. Okay, this is gonna be hard to see, but you can see we went over to 29 and then we took this little pick and put a little divot right there to start the drill. I'm not gonna lie though, after doing that, I did a little test fit and I think I want it 5 millimeters further forward. So I put a mark right there, 5 millimeters forward on both sides. Instead of coming to the 50 line, I went to 55 to make up that 5 millimeter difference, and we're gonna drill those spots and pray. All right, we're gonna start with a real small drill bit just to get kind of like a guide going, and I came out into the sun so that I can see better. Now we can peel this sticker off, and then who knows how well you guys can see this, but just to double check, I lined up the old fender and the new fender, and it looks like those holes we just drilled are directly in the middle of all of the old ones, so I'm feeling confident enough to keep going. Now the stock fender's holes are this big because they use these collars, and I think if I remember what I measured last night, they're like 10 millimeter holes, but you can see how thick that collar is. That's because of how thick this fender is, and it's probably hard to tell, but the new one is not that thick, so we won't be able to use the collars. So instead of a 10 mil, I'm just gonna drill it out to an M6, which is what the bolts are, and that should be good. Okay, I'm not sweating, you guys are. Okay, so an M6 is roughly a 1/4 inch, and that fits perfect. But now, real moment of truth, does everything line up? I can't even lie, boys. I just did like a minor mock-up to make sure that the bolt pattern was even like close to what we needed, just like before I filmed this next bit to be sure, and I think it's gonna be perfect. Psych! The bolts are too fucking long, god damn it.
Many minutes later.
Okay, an hour later, but who's counting? We are finally back with what had better be the correct hardware, because if it is not the correct hardware, I'm going to let's find out.
2 hours later.
Okay, it's not perfect, but the vision is there. Hear me out. It looks good, right? From far away, and then you get up close and you see what I had to use to get it the right height. I have friggin' spacers and bolts everywhere trying to figure this out, and this is not how it's gonna stay. This is just what I ended up using to find the perfect height. At the height that it is now, you can see that it comes pretty close to looking OEM. Like the headlight's only a couple of millimeters off from touching the fender, and it really kind of like fits in there real nice, you know, like the V comes down into the V. So I'm quite happy with the fitment. I'm quite happy with how it looks. I'm just not not exactly happy with what I had to do here, but fear not, I already ordered the exact spacers that I'll need, the exact inner and outer diameter, the exact length that'll get it fitting as close to OEM as possible. I think it's actually gonna be like 2 millimeters closer than that, so it should really look stock. And those will be here in 2 days, so that'll be here before this video comes out, and I guess probably before I do like the grand reveal footage of the bike for the video, and I'll have it in time to link it in the description if you wanna do this yourself. But aside from the fact that I just spent all day chasing down a few millimeters, trying to get this down to the perfect millimeterage. Is that a word? What the f am I saying today? It took forever to get this at the perfect height, but now that it is, I am so pleased with it. It looks so much better than the stock Fender, although I'm not sure if it's showing through the camera or not, but because this is universal, it's not an exact paint match to the OEM white, which is kind of like hard to tell unless you know what you're looking for anyway. But the thing that makes it worse is the fact that the Honda handguards are also not a match to the Honda paint, which is crazy. These are OEM factory Honda XR150 handguards, but they don't match the white. And not only that, but this white is different from this white, and this white is closer to that white than this one is. So we're gonna take these off so that it's not 3 different colors, and I think it'll look a lot better. All right, let's see how much better it looks once yeah, that is way better. Okay, I couldn't resist. I had to bring her out into the sunlight for the first time. Holy crap, she's looking so good. I realized that this whole time I've just been in the storage unit working on her and haven't pulled her out here to like really see how things are progressing. And I realized that we're almost at the stage where we put the wheels on, so I wanted to see how she looked otherwise. And dude, it looks so freaking good. Especially how clean this entire back end looks without the passenger foot pegs, without the fender, without the rear rack. And I kind of forgot that I had taken out this little like toolkit back here. The whole back end just looks so clean and sleek now. And to be totally honest, you can't even really notice that the fender is mounted with just like Frankenstein pieces of spacers and collars and stuff, but it's still gonna look so much better once the actual like one single spacer for it comes in. But seeing how much of an impact the back end has made so far and how good that fender looks, I'm really wondering, do we keep going on the front end, and now that we've taken the handguards off, do we also put some pro taper bars on and take those giant lollipop mirrors off? Like, is that gonna make all the difference for the front too? What a weird f***ing day, dude. Listen, I've been telling you guys from the beginning of this video that vibes were kind of weird. I wasn't really feeling it, and then just like, things are just going weird today, you know? I just went home after filming that last clip so that I could, cause I was talking about like, oh, pro taper bars would look cool. I went home to charge my camera while I looked to see if Cycle Gear had pro taper bars, cause I'm like, screw it, we'll do that too. And long story short, I go home and almost get into a physical altercation with the dude cause he has his wiener out pissing behind the dumpster at my condo 5 feet away from my Navi. Anyway, I ended up we didn't go to get the bars because Cycle Gear doesn't have them. So what I'm about to do is drill into the end of this bar to see if there's a bar weight. And if there's not, then I'm gonna take the mirrors off and put a bar and mirror. But if there is, then we'll wait until we eventually do pro tapers. But yeah, I pull up and there's an SUV like parked 5 feet away from the Navi, and I see somebody like hiding behind the dumpster. And I'm like, is somebody stealing my Navi right now? So I get out and I go, what the f is going on? And I see him like shaking, and he comes around the corner. Sorry, delivery, no bathroom. I don't care, dude. If either of my 70-year-old female neighbors came out while you had your little gordita out, you wouldn't be able to deliver within 500 feet of a school for the rest of your life. What the f are you doing, dude? Anyway, I just drilled in, and it doesn't seem as if there's a bar end. So before we do the wheels and tires, I think this is actually the last thing we're doing before it. We're gonna take these mirrors off, do a bar end mirror, and it should look really clean. Why does this feel... Did it just cross-thread that hole just from me knocking it loose? It just cross-threaded that just from me knocking it loose like that. These threads must actually be made out of butter because like this one is reverse thread, that one is normal thread, and just for me tapping the mirror to break it loose in the wrong direction, it just stripped the threads and let it start going, and then broke the mirror. Is somebody trying to tell me something today? Is this a sign? Listen, I might not be the smartest guy ever, but I do know how to take signs and know when to call it quits. Not only did I just break that mirror, but now it is starting to rain. But I have to say, taking the mirrors off was definitely the right move. Look at how much cleaner this thing looks now, dude. I'm so pleased with the way that everything's coming together. Got the same bar end mirror on here that I use on all of the bikes except for the Rebel 1100. That one uses slightly different ones, but these are the ones off of Amazon that fold in so you can lane split, and they're only like 20 bucks, but I only use one on each of the bikes because it's so concave I can see everything behind me. And fortunately, you guys know the little block off things that I use where the mirrors used to go are the ones that have the Allen key thing on top, so I was able to just drive that one down through the messed up threads, and both of them are nice and secure. Look at how clean it looks now, dude. Everyone knows it's a cardinal sin to swap to new tires and not send out the old one in an absolute blaze of glory. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. Which can only mean one thing: it is finally time to put on the new wheels and tires and truly turn this thing into a Supermoto. I'm so stoked. If I don't sound as stoked as I say I am, it's because honestly, today started out even worse than yesterday. But what did I say? Who's gonna carry the boats?
Who's gonna carry the boats and the logs? That's you, buddy.
If I'm being totally honest, actually, I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna film today unless this burnout makes me feel better. And it did, so we're gonna roll with it. Now, the moment we have all been waiting for, let's take a look at these wheels and tires. Dude, how sick do they look? Now, both of these are 17s, both the rear and the front. I believe I already mentioned it before, but stock form, we have 17 in the back and 19 in the front. So this is gonna change the looks, the handling, everything like that, and looks so much better in the process. I believe the rear is a 3.5 wide and the front is a 3 wide. As you can see on both of them, I went with the black rim and then the polished spokes and the polished hubs. Tell me that that does not look so gangster, dude. Now, these came from my guy Jose in the Philippines, aka the Manoy 66. Hopefully I pronounced that right. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. He is the absolute man when it comes to supermotoing anything. He runs a wheel and tire shop in the Philippines, and if you go to his pages, you can see all the crazy builds that he's done. Some of the combos are pretty crazy. I thought about going with like a crazy color for the rims for a little while because he does some cool like half and half rims, but I think this look will be best for, you know, just everything. Like if I decide to switch up the color of the bike at some point, it'll match everything. And he ships anywhere. So wherever you are, if you want to do a Supermoto setup on your XR150, reach out to him. I'll leave a link to all of his stuff below: Instagram, Facebook, and his YouTube channel. Like I said, he is the absolute man when it comes to supermotoing these things. Now, he sent these to me already with bearings pressed in and already with the spokes trued, all that kind of good stuff. All I had to do was get some tires and throw those on, and these tires keep in line perfectly with our budget theme of this Supermoto build because these tires are actually takeoffs from a Kawasaki KLX 300. It worked out perfectly to where the tire sizes that we needed are the exact same tire size that you would find on the KLX 300. From what I've seen, these tires get pretty good reviews online, and I got them off a buddy for only $50 each when he upgraded his tires on his KLX. So if you go this route, that's an option to find nice tires for cheap. And then we'll have to press in these dust covers, and this is like something for the speedo cable, and then we'll be taking the stock sprocket and putting it on the rear and the stock brake rotor and putting it on the front. Easy in theory, but with the way that things have been going, we'll see if it's actually that easy in practice. Okay, so we're gonna start with the front wheel, but first things first, we have to get the bike off the ground, and I got this fancy dirt bike lift off of Amazon, but I gotta be honest, when I tested it, it was a little sketchy, so we'll see if we can make it less sketchy this time. Is that gonna work? Well, that seemed to work. What was the issue before? Oh, right. That the front came off the ground, but the rear didn't? Well, good thing we're starting with the front, huh? Okay, apparently the first thing we have to do is remove this screw. Like I said, remove that screw. And then I guess that's for the speedometer. So somehow the speedometer cable... Huh, oh, there's oil. I didn't know that that's how life worked. Okay, then it looks like the axle is gonna be a 19 on this side and a 14 on this side. Shazam! Okay, now apparently we have to remove the speedometer gearbox, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not super familiar with how all this works, and it didn't say anything about there being liquids in there, so we'll see what happens. Oh, well yeah, it has grease in there, but that's weird that it was like oozing like that. Okay, easy. Flip her over. Gonna get this spacer out of the way to reuse on the new wheel. And then we got 10 mil bolts to get the rotor off. And by bolts, I mean nuts. I know what I'm doing. Okay, now on the new wheel, we're gonna take the new speedometer gear thingy and put it in there. You'll see little like indents there that line up with these, like so. Now we're gonna put the new dust seals on, and it says that you wanna put some grease on the outside of it before sliding it in. So we're just gonna use this all-purpose grease here. I got all the dust things and all the OEM replacement stuff off of Partzilla, so I'll leave links to that below as well. Oh, that's the wrong one for that side. Lock it up. As I was saying, ghetto. I mean, that seems to be sitting flush, so we should be good, right? Let's just make sure that this tricky little bugger goes back in. Yeah. Gucci. Flip her over, and first we'll do this dust cover. How much of a pain in the wiener is this one gonna be? Oh, that one's easier. Maybe that's why I was under the delusion, because that's the one that I tested earlier and it was fine. And then it seems like this one's just gonna... Yeah, I mean, it's sitting flush. Let's go. Okay, and then the new wheels come with new bolts to put the rotor on. The stock ones use studs and a nut, which might theoretically be the better and/or right thing to do, but if it comes with these, I'm gonna use these. So we'll put this on, and since we were just playing with grease, make sure that if your hands are all greasy, don't touch the rotor, and if you do, then hit it with some brake clean. Okay, now once all the bolts are in place, just kind of sitting there, what we're gonna do is go through and tighten it in a crisscross pattern. So picture as you're drawing a star in elementary school or something like that. Tighten it in a crisscross pattern, but do it in like 2 or 3 steps. By doing it crisscross and tightening it slowly, that helps center everything. And on the final go, we're gonna use our torque wrench, and we're gonna do 11 foot-pounds. Why is that stressing me out? That definitely just stripped out. All right, we got the rotor on, but it wasn't exactly the easiest. Something weird happened where it seemed like one of the bolt holes, only one of them, was like already partially stripped out. I don't know how to describe it best, but essentially there was one of the holes that when I went to tighten the bolt down, it would get all the way tight without the rotor on, but as soon as I tried to tighten it anything more than finger tight with the rotor in place, it just kept spinning. So it's almost like half the threads were already stripped out somehow. I don't know, but I went to Home Depot and just got longer bolts, and all of them seem to torque down just fine. So we should be good to go, but definitely a little weird, but I guess not weird considering all of the everything that's happened during this build. Okay, now when we go to put this back on, you'll see there's kind of like a groove here on this gearbox, and that will just have to slide over that thing right there. Lift it up into place, get the rotor into the caliper while getting that Johnson over that Johnson. Looks like that's lined up. Yeah. Okay, now we just gotta tighten the axle to 32 foot-pounds. Then we gotta put this thing back on, and you can hopefully see there's like a slit that will line up with a flat thing in there. Tighten it back down with this. And then we gotta grab the front brakes and pump it a few times to seat everything.
The next day.
Welcome to day 4 of a build that should have taken 2 days max if it weren't for the fact that my mental health is failing and I don't have a real workshop. Let me catch you up to speed. The vision is finally coming together, boys. It looks so much better even just with the front wheel, and today we are finally doing the last piece of the puzzle, the back wheel. Now I finished up the front wheel last night, and then I took it for a quick little like ride around the parking lot here to make sure that everything was good to go, and I heard this weird squeaking coming from the front end, and couldn't figure out what it was. At that point, it was actually past the time that I was allowed to be here. So I'm like, let me go home, come back with a clear head. This morning, I took the entire wheel and everything apart again to try and figure out what the squeaking was, because I thought that like the caliper was squeaking or something. Long story short, what I figured out is that right where that speedometer gearbox meets up with the hub here, that dust seal that we put in there, I put grease around it to get it to slide into the hub, but the squeaking was actually the gearbox rubbing on the face of that dust cover. So I put grease on the face of the dust seal where it like meets up with that gearbox, and we're good to go now after taking the caliper off and all sorts of things. I love having only motion sensor lights in here, isn't it great? Also, as I was leaving the condo, the Amazon driver was literally parking and I stopped her and got the spacers. Look at the correct spacers. Everyone always says, oh, Birch is too particular, he's too OCD, but tell me that doesn't look stock. They're the perfect height, they're the exact same outer diameter as this little part here, so it just looks like an extension of the OEM part. And not only that, it is the perfect height. You can see that the headlight lines up in there. It's touching it a little bit, but not putting pressure on it. I can barely put pressure on it, and you can see that it comes down. It is quite literally the exact perfect spec. I mean, just look at it. Come on. Okay, now let's not waste any time and get this rear wheel off. If my calculations are correct, we should be able to just use a regular wheel stand for this. Calculations correct. Okay, then we're gonna have to remove this brake adjuster thingy. Oh, I probably should have checked to see like how far it was threaded on before doing this, but oh well. And then take that out. I'll put this back on there for safekeeping. Barely any room to get 2 wrenches on here, but we're gonna break this loose. Both sides, of course. Next step is realize that we don't have the proper size socket for this nut and go home for the 9 millionth time in the past 4 days. It's fine. It's not like all these trips home into the hardware store have added hours and hours and hours of time to this. Psych! I got the adjustable bitch in the car. We'll worry about the proper size one when we torque it down. 17 on the left side, something I don't have on the right side. Holy sh**. Take that freaking axle out. Let's go, boys. Is it showing that my mental health is thriving a bit more today than the other days? Okay, then we'll take off the brake thingy. Oh, that's all that it does? What basic technology? That's crazy, actually. The more you know. There we go. Gotta put your freaking back into that shit, boys. 24 foot-pounds my ass. I don't think I already mentioned this, but we're just going with the stock sprockets when we swap. I had gotten a smaller front sprocket so that I could have a little bit more torque off the line for wheelies and such, but then I realized with how much smaller these tires are, I don't want to lose too much top end, so we're gonna wait and see which direction we want to go after we put some miles on the new build before we do any of that. Okay, stock sprocket and spacer. God, this thing's meaty. And when we tighten it down, it calls for 24 foot-pounds, unless you're Thor, who put these on from the factory. Okay, and then throw the spacer back in. I forget if I already said this or not, but I did already put that dust seal in off camera because you guys already saw me do that on the other wheel. Then we're gonna take the brake assembly and drop that back in on that side. Jose did send me this extended brake arm, which I really wanted to try out. You can see that it's considerably, not considerably, but a decent amount longer than the stock one, which means that it's less effort for the same amount of braking power. But if I'm being so honest, I think I'm just gonna hold that off until I swap out the sprockets, whenever that is. With the way that things have been going and the status of my mental health, I think I'm gonna leave that as is to make sure that everything feels the way that I'm used to it feeling, if that makes sense. But stay tuned for this and the sprocket video whenever I figure that out. Okay, now we just gotta put the wheel back in place. Same deal with the front. This little groove is gonna go into, on the other side of this, there's a little like knob that will go into this groove. Technical terms, I know. Oh, I just slid my nuts into that. There we go. I feel like lining it up is always the trickiest part. Get that chain back on the sprocket. At some point I gave up on the gloves and staying clean. And then from here it's just your basic setting the chain slack to about 1 inch as Honda says, and then using this adjusting nut here so that when you're done, your brake lever free play is, I think they say 15 to 25 millimeters. We did it, boys. She's done. Not only is she done, but she is a thing of beauty. This is a dream. She looks so much better than I ever could have imagined. And if this camera angle seems crazy, it's because the camera is actually propped up on the bike so that as I gaze into her beautiful soul, you guys feel like you're here, being gazed upon as well.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
But regardless of how funny I think this camera angle is, I know you guys want to see it because honestly, dude, this turned out so much better than I expected. This thing is like my dream mini moto Supermoto. Supermoto. Let's go out for the first rip, see how she feels, and get her somewhere scenic so you guys can see her in her entirety for the first time ever. It's amazing. Literally even better than I could have hoped for. It's incredible. Look at it, dude. Look at how good it looks in this lighting pulled out of the storage unit. Dude, it all just came together so much better than I ever could have planned on. I tried to keep focus on the bike, but I don't want to break my ankle just to do that. Just look at it, dude. Oh my gosh. Oddly enough, this angle right here is one of my favorite angles of the bike now. Because that area right there, like, I don't know, just looks so clean without the rack, without the toolkit. And you can like really see how low the bars look and the bar end mirror. Oh my god, dude. It could all be in my head because honestly I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to be feeling, but I think it feels a little bit torquier. The thing that's throwing my head for a loop, and I'm in no place to be figuring this out with my mental status the past few days, as you guys know, but the speedometer reads off of the front, but it's the back that's connected to the engine. The back is 2.4% smaller than stock, but the front is 9.1% smaller than stock, which, correct me if I'm wrong, should mean about a 9% difference in how the speedo reads, but about a 2.5% increase in torque feel, but also 2.5% loss in top end. I mean, it sounds right because it does feel like slightly peppier, if you will, but you can definitely see that when you're cruising at 40 or 50, it's probably about 4 miles per hour off, so math makes sense. And I gotta say, one of the biggest changes with this bike is how it handles now. Going from a 19 front to a 17 front, where's the car coming from? I knew I heard one. Changes the handling characteristics so much, mixed with the beefier tires and the more street-oriented tires. It just wants to lean. It dips so nice. Needless to say, I could not be more stoked on this, and honestly, if you guys decide that you want to do everything that I just did that took me 4 days, as long as your mental health is okay and you're not going crazy the whole time, and especially now that I have figured out for you guys like the exact length bolts and spacers and how to make stuff work, it honestly, for a competent person, should only take like probably 2 days tops to do everything, maybe even a day. And of course, links to everything are in the description. If you have any questions, leave comments, and as always, do your own research before doing this. I am by no means a professional, as I'm sure you guys could tell. Shout out to the Patreon members for making all of this possible and helping me chase my dreams. Shout out to everyone who has already subscribed to the second channel to see all of my moto vlogs and trips. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Love you guys. Peace.
Oh, so basic. Hope you play this. Damn, I prayed it. Nice song, and I became this. Old souls fake it. Paid those placements. And I'm still waiting on the brighter days. Been a minute, been rough many times more. And I'm kicking rocks to a sky of gray. Praying hard, talk to me before I'm done for.